On the island of Borneo, you'll find 3 countries. One small island, 3 countries. Part of it's home to Indonesia, part of it's home to Malaysia, and lastly, in the corner is the petroleum-rich country of Brunei. While not the biggest country, they've got money, and lots of it, from petroleum and natural gas reserves. Ran as a monarchy by the Sultan of Brunei, this country boasts a mixture of common English law and Islamic Sharia law, and hosts an official language of Malay, despite almost every sign also having Arabic as well. The country actually lists second highest in quality of life by HDI in Southeast Asia, only behind Singapore. Although the only thing that I couldn't help but shake is the feeling of the wealth distribution being a bit skewed, with people seemingly being excessively rich or poor. But that's my summary from an extremely short visit. I'm really here out of pure curiosity. You see, this country has a national airline that, honestly, I didn't even know about until a couple years ago, but I've been wanting to try it out ever since. The desire was only heightened when the Sultan of Brunei brought his Brunei 787 to my home airport of San Francisco for the APEC conference, an event that brought a whole slew of uncommon visitors. Lo and behold, months later, here I am, and I'm ready to try this airline for myself in business class from their hub in the capital city of Bandar Seri, Begawan, down under to Melbourne, Australia. Let's check this out. Welcome to the only commercial airport in Brunei, serving the capital city and the rest of the country. Most of the flights here are with Royal Brunei Airlines, but there are a few flights a day from airlines like Singapore, Malaysian, Cebu Pacific, Air Asia, and Lucky Air. The check-in area only has a few rows, although most of it is for Royal Brunei Airlines. Royal Brunei has 1 row for economy passengers and 1 row for business class passengers. The business class check-in area has a bit more decoration to it. I do find the seating a bit funny, just because I feel like most people are just checking in and moving on. Now, I had planned on carrying on my suitcase, but Royal Brunei only allows each passenger to carry on 10 kilos of hand luggage, including business class passengers, which I don't entirely get. I get charging for overweight checked bags since it's extra work for rampers, but I'm not sure my average suitcase is ever under 10 kilos, and I'm the one lifting it. So I guess I'll move on from my little tangent. We'll head through security and immigration, where there was a line for business class passengers, but there wasn't anyone in the business class or normal line, so it literally took me about 20 seconds to get through. Heck yeah, Brunei. The terminal entrance after security has a whole lot of souvenir shops. I found some great stuff on my walk to all the gates, and then at the end of the hallway we reached the central area, which hosts the majority of the gates around the last of the shops, but most importantly was the Royal Brunei Lounge upstairs. After watching some of these Royal Brunei aircraft arrive, including a matching 787 to ours, which would be leaving for Dubai shortly, it was time to check out the lounge for Royal Brunei passengers. And if you're wondering why pretty much every shot outside sucks, it's because between me and the outside world, there's 2 different ropes keeping us out of the seating area without going through a security check, and then there's 2 different panes of window because they have that hallway out to immigration. So all said and done, pretty much no pictures of the airplanes without all these metal bars in the way. In the center of the main rotunda, up the spiral staircase, is the lounge. There's 2 sides of this lounge, one that's pay to use and one that's only for business class passengers, although business class passengers can use either side for free. Upon entering, the left side is the Sky Lounge, which is for corporate travelers or people who'd like to pay to enter. This side can get much busier, mostly because anyone can enter for a little cash, but at this time of day, it was essentially empty. There was plenty of seating in a few different rooms. There was also this cool art of the Kampong Air water village. The only people in the lounge, however, were sitting right in front of it, of course. The main part of this lounge is the buffet-style dining, which includes mostly Brunei and Malaysian cuisine and a couple Western options. Then this side also had a gaming and movie area, although it looked roped off at this time. Then the other side of the lounge, which is only for people holding business class tickets. This side has a bunch more seating, but it's more exclusive. Space was never an issue. This side also offers some sleeper chairs and massage chairs, along with some computers and printers. Instead of buffet dining, this side of the lounge offers a la carte dining directly off their menu. They also have a discussion room, which is separate from the meeting room. I'll let you figure out the difference because I couldn't. I chose the a la carte dining over the buffet, which was a questionable choice. I ordered the fish stick starter and then the caprese chicken main course. I guess it's worth noting that most of the a la carte items are Western, and the buffet tends to be a little bit more local or regional. Lastly, both sides of the lounge do have showers. They aren't exactly private rooms, but just a couple stalls in the main restrooms. They give you the shampoo and soap in the shower suites, and then if you need a towel, you can give them your boarding pass for the towel and trade back afterwards. The only drawback is that since it's just this stall, if you want to use the sink or a mirror, you'll have to use the main sink area in the restroom. Then off to gate 5 for boarding, where the plane was waiting for us. We ended up delayed by about 30 minutes, but weren't told ahead of time, so I was here with plenty of time. This proved useful since we had to go through a security check. Really just a quick bag check that they do on a lot of flights to Australia and America. Then I got in the queue for premier boarding, which included business class, and after the pre-boarding was complete, it was time for business class to board. Welcome to the 3-row cabin of Royal Brunei's 787 business class. Set up in a 222 configuration, it's definitely behind the industry standard, but honestly, there's not many airlines that have new cabins in the 787-8 variant, so I'll chop it up to it being a 10-year-old airplane and therefore cabin. I'll be in seat 3A, which is the last row of business class, so let's look around while everyone else boards. The headrest isn't adjustable, but it does have a tiny little Royal Brunei logo on it. The armrest along the window is thin and doesn't move, but was super helpful for filming. The biggest problem with the 787-8 is that the last row is missing a window. Most airlines have a 4-row cabin, so I thought I was safe in row 3, but I guess not. At least I've still got 2 windows, just not in the best spot. Big time benefit is the overhead air vents. The growing rarity of these makes me appreciate them even more when I do have them. In front of you is the seatback TV, which is touchscreen but super far away from you. Between the screens for the 2 seats is 2 cubbies, so I guess it's up to you and your seatmate to decide who gets which one. They are fairly deep at least, so you can store a good amount of stuff. The footrest is below that, and just like with Kenya Airways, if you've seen that video of mine, it's not wedged under the seat in front of you, so there's tons of space. Between those is more storage. This one's perfect for literature or laptop that you want with you, since they force you to put all your bags in the overhead bins instead of underneath the footrest, even though there is this large storage area down there. In flight, I put my backpack down there, and I swear I could have fit a second backpack too. In addition, the little side compartment that could have fit 3 pairs of shoes, it was so deep. And then on front of the center console is more storage, although honestly I was less sure about how to use this one. The top of the console has this counter with plenty of space for drinks or even a computer if you aren't using it. The tray table then comes out of the side of that. And while I'm always concerned that these types of tables will droop, this one sits totally flat, and as a bonus you can swivel it if you need to get out of the seat while you have food on the table. The seat controls are up here on the counter, and behind that is the reading lights over your shoulder. Then there's an armrest that can also be raised for privacy in flight with the push of a button. Speaking of that button, it's right under the armrest with the headset jack and next to a water bottle holder and remote. Below the USB and universal charging port. And then for the pre-departure amenities. First, they came around with these hot towels, and they were hot. Then was the pre-departure drink choices of apple, orange, mango, or pineapple juice. In the seat waiting for us on boarding was a water bottle and a pair of these Royal Brunei branded noise-canceling headphones. The pillow at the seat was a great size and actually pretty comfortable. The comforter I was actually a really big fan of. It was oversized and thick enough to keep you perfectly warm. And then there was also a pair of slippers waiting for us that I changed into as soon as we were off the ground. Lastly was the amenity kits, which had the normal items of an eye mask, socks, and dental kit, alongside some lip balm and hand cream. After a pre-departure Islamic prayer on the CPEC TVs and overhead speakers, we pushed back and made a short taxi out to the runway. Not only was it short, but my view was pretty much of just darkness the whole time. So I'll fast forward most of that to the actual departure, where at least we were on the right side to see the capital city. We just had to hope that the iPhone camera could conquer its mortal enemy: nighttime videos. Because we were only going to get one full meal on this flight, they didn't serve it immediately after departure. They instead just gave us a post-departure beverage and a little snack that we chose before we took off. I chose a Coke and these nice little biscuit cookies. Then looking through some of the entertainment system, which has the usual movies, TV shows, music, kids section, and flight info. Movie categories were broad, so there was a lot of items in each section. I guess that's a good thing about their selection, but the interface was so slow and laggy that I got frustrated after clicking forever and never actually saw everything in the collection. Similarly, the TV shows also had broad categories, but at least there was less shows. Each show also had multiple episodes, but only a few from random seasons. The music I didn't spend much time on, but was probably the widest selection of entertainment. And then was the maps. The maps weren't adjustable, but you could select different views or choose for them to cycle through all of them. Lastly, they unfortunately do not offer Wi-Fi connectivity on their flights at this time, something I guess we'll have to wait and see if they install with the new fleet. We weren't handed any menus, but instead they came by to take our orders in flight and had the menu on an iPad. Here's a look at the options we were given for the meal. It's important to realize that there's no alcoholic beverages on board Royal Brunei Airlines. Royal Brunei, just like the country of Brunei, does not sell alcohol. According to the internet, however, which is obviously never wrong, non-Muslims are allowed to bring their own alcohol on board. Shortly later, it was time to enjoy that meal we ordered, which came in a few courses. For starters was the soup and a bread roll. This was followed by a beef tenderloin and shiitake salad. Then for the main course, they had substituted the regular beef choice with a biryani. I chose to go with that special biryani, and it was full of flavor. Kinda hard to mess that up, at least, with a biryani. Then for dessert was the assorted cake that once again was specially placed on the menu for the celebration of the end of Ramadan, I believe. I also like the look of the silverware on Royal Brunei, the black handle and small little logo. Then it was time to set up the bed. We didn't have enough time to get a full night's rest, so just some relaxation for me, but that didn't stop me from setting up the bed and testing it out. After it goes fully flat, we can dress it up with the bedding. First off is the comforter. As mentioned, it is more than big enough to cover the whole seat. You don't even have to worry about it falling off if you toss and turn a little bit. They did have throw blankets as well. If you want layers, you just had to ask for them. Then the pillow, which was plenty big enough to fill the whole space. I just found it a bit too soft for my personal touch. Then there is a lot of space for your feet, like almost unlimited space since you aren't cramming them underneath another seat and there's no sidewalls. Say what you want about having to climb over your seat neighbor in this configuration, but these setups have the most comfortable beds, at least in terms of available space. To make things better, the comforter and throw blankets are insanely warm, and the air vents allow you to cool it off so you can really set your perfect temperature. Lastly, you know we had to raise that armrest for a little more privacy. Honestly, people walking past will still see you, but at least you have some privacy from your seat neighbor. Honestly, this bed was crazy comfortable. I didn't sleep just because of the timing and length of the flight, but I definitely relaxed, put on a movie, and then was extremely unsuccessful at getting work done. Eventually, we reached the north coast of Australia. Look how gorgeous that is. Eventually, I got up to walk around and explore the cabin a little bit, starting off with the lavatory. The lavatory of Royal Brunei's 787 was almost average. I say that because first off, there was a bidet function on the toilet. There's also an assortment of amenities on the countertop, including toothpicks, toothbrushes, shaving kits, and an air freshener. Then it was time for a mid-flight snack. They didn't exactly have menus, but they did have a couple different options for drinks. So I went with a coffee, and then they gave me these shrimp crackers to go with it. And after being comfortable and finally getting some work done for a little bit, the lights slowly began to raise and we were given a pre-arrival beverage with the same choices as the pre-departure beverage. I just chose to go with mango this time to accompany my hot towel. And then after about 7 hours, we were finally making our descent into an overcast Melbourne just before sunrise. Now, 49 years ago, while still under British control, the government of Brunei decided to launch a flag carrier of their own, to be known simply as Royal Brunei. Starting with a pair of 737s, they launched with service to Singapore, followed later by Malaysia and Hong Kong, which was also under British control at the time. After Brunei's independence from Britain in 1984, they were finally able to connect the new country to all 5 ASEAN capitals: Singapore, Hong Kong, Kuala Lumpur, Jakarta, and Manila. In the 90s, they brought in 757s to support higher density, but also saw growth spread outside the Southeast Asian countries. With these aircraft, they were finally able to connect to other Arabic countries and cities like Dubai and Jeddah, but also Bangkok and Perth. In the first half of the 90s, actually, they spent a good amount of time connecting themselves to the Muslim world, adding flights to places like Cairo, Bahrain, and Bali. The second half of the 90s saw more growth to countries with newer diplomatic relations with the young country, with service to places like Brisbane and Osaka. In 97, following the crash of one of their Dorniers, they decided to scrap their short-haul service and focus more on the medium and long-haul routes. By the end of the 90s, they had replaced their 737s with 767s, and finally saw their first service to Europe, flying to London and Frankfurt with intermediate stops that still remain to this day. They also saw a good amount of consolidating to help make all of that work out. In addition to cutting the short-haul network, they also trimmed smaller demand cities in order to move aircraft and bulk up the higher demand cities like Singapore and Dubai, and the destinations being reached via connections in Singapore and Dubai. The new millennium brought a new CEO with the goal of a refresh, launching more medium-haul markets in Asia and Oceania. He also helped the government reach an agreement with the UK allowing for more service to support the rise in tourism, despite the elimination of the Frankfurt service. One of the more exciting plans was an agreement with the government of Tonga, the Pacific island nation. Royal Tongan Airlines was to lease 757s from Royal Brunei, and in return, Royal Brunei would be allowed to connect in Tonga in order to reach the United States. Unfortunately, before that could come to fruition, Royal Tongan went belly up. The 757s were repossessed, and Royal Brunei never did reach the Americas. The next 10-ish years brought about 10 new destinations and scrapped 10 old ones that weren't working. Then under new management again, they leased 777s from Singapore Airlines in 2010 to really grow their long-haul network and refresh their aging 767 fleet. In 2013, under their fourth CEO of the century, they picked up the 787s they have now and also dropped a good chunk of low-demand long-haul routes to focus solely on the few that really brought in money. Since then, they've continued shuffling through a number of CEOs, although it's unclear if that's because the CEOs wanted to leave or if the government wanted them to leave. To this day, Royal Brunei is not in any sort of alliance, but due to their small network, they have set up some codeshare and interline partnerships with a handful of airlines from Asia, Africa, Europe, and Oceania, allowing customers to book connecting journeys with segments on Royal Brunei, despite not being in an alliance. They have maintained their own frequent flyer program known as Royal Skies since 2003, however. I can't imagine it works all that well outside of Royal Brunei operated flights, but it still has existed for quite some time. To this day, the airline is still owned by the Brunei government and has yet to post a profit in their history as per a 2017 article, but at least the government directly is the ones footing the bill. It also appeared that they had about a 70% load factor at that time following a loss in the last couple years leading up to it. Currently, they're operating 13 aircraft of A321 and 787 types to 22 destinations, all of which are international since you could practically throw a stone from one side of the country to the other. The only real hint towards their future at the moment came when they placed an order for 4 787-9s at this year's Singapore Air Show. These will become the largest aircraft in the fleet and will likely take over the busier routes like Australia, Dubai, and the London flight, which operated via Dubai, therefore freeing up the 787-8s for new growth. Personally, I hope they use them to finally reach the US, but that's all blind hope for now. Welcome to Australia, a very important destination for Royal Brunei, partially for the tourism crowd but also political reasons. I always love trying new airlines, and at least in my opinion, the smaller the airline, the more fun the experience is. Having just learned about this airline in the last couple years, I was super excited to try it out, and now that I've done that, we can reflect on how it compares. I'll start off with the airport. As far as check-in and immigration, the airport is so small they don't necessarily need special lines for business class passengers, but I was grateful to see the decorated check-in area and priority lane for security and immigration. The lounge was a great space for an airport of that size. Typically with smaller airports, the lounges really lack some luxurious amenities, but Royal Brunei didn't skimp on things. For starters, there was a ton of space between the two spaces. But it was super incredible to have one side set aside for business class passengers with a la carte dining and shower suites, even if the showers were just a part of the restroom. On board, admittedly, the cabin is lacking a good setup, as the concept of a seat neighbor is a major drawback in modern business classes, but the seats have their perks in terms of the space you do have. That being said, I didn't feel like I could entirely take advantage of the space just due to the baggage policies. Having to check my bag was a little frustrating and took a half hour away from my already minimum rest overnight in Melbourne. And then not being able to keep my bag handy for takeoff or landing, even under the footrest or buckled into the empty seat next to me, was a bit strange. The crew was great. They were super caring and seemed genuinely happy to be there. The food was also great, and I enjoyed them serving each course individually. All that being said, while the experience has its strengths, there's definitely a few parts that could benefit from a little modernization, which seems to be right around the corner with new 787s on the horizon. Regardless, Malaysian and Singapore Airlines offer connections to most of the world to get to Brunei, but with a connection. So for the destinations that are served by Royal Brunei Airlines, you can't really beat a direct flight. Honestly, 9 times out of 10, I'd take a less modern cabin in exchange for non-stop service. But maybe that's just me. Let me know what you think about Royal Brunei Airlines long-haul service, and until next Sunday, safe travels. I'll see y'all next time.